Hi, and welcome back to my channel. On this video, I'm going to be talking about my March to be read pile. What are the 17 books that I have chosen for this month to read? And then at the end of the video, I'm going to be picking out 5 books from my Kindle list that are based on a random alphabet letter draw to see what else I'm going to add to this pile. I've decided to do a bit of a challenge for myself this year in 2022 to try to read 22 books each month. And I was able to do this in January and February. We'll see if I can continue to do it in March. So I'm adding 22 books to my list and we'll see how I can do. So I'm going to give you the list of what I've put on intentionally, and then we'll go ahead and do the random draw as well. So 2 books that I have on my list for this month are by John Scalzi. And this is based on a book that I read last month where he was describing a syndrome called lock-in, which was the book's title. And there is a second book in this series called Head On, and then also a book called Unlocked, which is kind of a little bit of a novella. It's meant to be kind of an oral history of this particular world that he's building. So I added both of these books to my to be read pile. The Head On book is a regular length. It's a little over 300 pages. Unlocked is only 63 pages, so I don't think it'll take me too long to get through that. The next book that I have on my list is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is also a relatively short book, and I was able to get it on audio from my library. I added this to my list this month pretty much because of timing of when I was able to get this book. I really don't know much about it. I think there's something about a robot. I don't really know much more than that. So I will report back at the end of the month when I do my debrief. The next book that I have on my list is actually a nonfiction book that I was able to pick up from my library recently. And this is one that I had on my Amazon wish list. And I went kind of crazy at my library and pulled like 10 nonfiction books that I had on my Amazon wish list that I wanted to try out. And so I'm adding The Lazy Genius Way by Kendra Adachi to my to be read list for this month. And I've got a bunch of other nonfiction stuff kind of waiting in the wings. If I have any extra room this month, I will probably add more to this list. But for right now, this is one of the ones that I have from the library, and I'm looking forward to diving into it. The next book on my list is called These Silent Woods by Kimmy Cunningham Grant. I admit I have already read this book. It is the 4th day of March, and this was actually the first book that I was able to finish this month. General premise is you have a father and a daughter who are living kind of off the grid. We don't know why, and the father is very protective of the daughter, and we're just kind of seeing the story go on from there. I'll definitely report back in more detail at the end of the month, but this is one that I actually have already been able to wrap up already. Okay, next I have on my list Taste by Stanley Tucci. I have heard great things about this nonfiction book. Stanley Tucci, I think, is a wonderful actor, so I'm excited to dive into this. I was able to get this on audio from my library, and really what I found, to read this many books in a month, I need quite a few of them on audio. So I usually try to have about half of the books available to me on audio, and I've worked my way up to reading, depending on the narrator, sometimes as fast as 3 times the normal speed. As long as the narrator really clearly enunciates what they're saying, I can understand what's going on. And especially for nonfiction, this makes it go super fast. I definitely wasn't able to do that from the very beginning of listening to audio. You kind of work your way up to that speed, but it definitely helps me to get through these books faster. And I can usually get through a book maybe in a day or a couple of days, and that certainly helps me get through the to be read pile. Okay, the next book I have on this list is the essay collection by Ann Patchett called These Precious Days. This is a book that I actually started reading in a hard copy from my local library at the end of 2021, and then I had to return it, and so I decided to check it out on ebook, and this is when it finally got to me from all the holds that are on this book. So I had partially read this, and I have, I would say, about a third of it left to do, including the title essay, These Precious Days. So I'm really looking forward to wrapping this book up. I think I'll be able to do this one relatively quickly as well, because I'm not reading the whole thing, which means I'll probably be able to add in a little bit extra to my to be read pile, because it's not the full book that I'm reading. Okay, the next book that I have on my list is The Gunkle by Stephen Rowley. And you may know that author's name. It might sound familiar because I read The Lily and the Octopus, which is by the same author, in January. And the Gunkle, which stands for gay uncle, I don't really know much about the plot other than I'm assuming there is a gay uncle involved in the book. But I really loved Lily and the Octopus. And Stephen Rowley has another book called The Editor, which I also picked up on ebook as well. I don't know if I'll get to it this month, but I really love his work. I think it's really kind of fun and fantastical. So that's another one I'm excited to dive into. Next on the list is Alison Galen's The Collective. And again, another book I don't know much about, but has gotten a lot of hype. So this is definitely in the genre that I typically read. I've seen it everywhere, people talking about it on social media, and I wanted to pick it up. I put it on hold at my library, and this is the month that it became available to me. So I often plan my TBR pile around what is available through my local library, and I can place up to 15 holds. I can check out, I think, up to 20 items. So I'm able to really plan this well so that I can use both a mix of books that I own and books that I'm checking out from the library. Next up on my list is 20 Years Later by Charlie Donnelly. And this is a book that I just thought the premise sounded really interesting. It involves 9/11. And basically there is a woman who is accused of a crime, and then she dies in the 9/11 tower attacks. And this is about someone trying to kind of either clear her name or try to figure out what happened 20 years after that. So I love stories that take you back in time or go back and forth between like a cold case and present day. These are some of my favorite books to read, so I'm excited to dive into this one and see what I think. This is also one that I was able to get on audio as well. Next up is The Brutal Telling by Louise Penny. I am continuing my read into this series. If you watched my February debrief video, you know that I got through 3 of her books in the month of February. So I want to get through book number 5, if I can, in the month of March. The next book I have on my list is one that I've also heard a lot of hype about, but I don't know much about what it involves. It's by Alex Harrow, The 10,000 Doors of January. This is one that there's a couple people that I really respect their reviews on Bookstagram and social media. And if they post something and they really like it, I usually add it to my list. So this is one that I added to my library hold list. I was able to get it on, I think, ebook format. So I added it to my March pile. The next book on my list is Philip Roth's The Plot Against America. This is a book that I've been wanting to read for a really long time. I did notice that it is on Audible, but it goes off of Audible where it's no longer available to me on March 18th. So I'm going to try to stack this so I can get it done before then. My understanding is this is kind of a historical retelling of if I think World War II ended differently, how would it have impacted present day? I could be completely wrong on that, but this is my recollection of what this book is about. So I'm very curious to dive in. I've read a couple other things by Philip Roth and have enjoyed them. So it was kind of fun to see this having a bit of a deadline on Audible so that I could pick it up and finish this book. Next up is a book called YearOne by Nora Roberts. I don't typically read a lot of Nora Roberts. I'm very aware of her work, but I don't know that I've even read one of her books in the past. I know she also writes under pen names, so I'd have to look and see if there's anything that I've read by her. But this is a post-apocalyptic book. I've definitely gotten into those lately. I'm sure it's tied to the fact that we are smack in the middle of a pandemic. And I just find it really interesting how people are using this as kind of a plot line in various ways. So I did pick up YearOne. There is a trilogy, I believe, so I'm looking forward to seeing if I like the first book enough to continue on with books 2 and 3. Next up is The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. This is book number 3 in the Wheel of Time series. I'm trying to get through all 14 of those books this year. So I'm really looking forward to diving into book number 3. I did read book number 1 in January, book number 2 in February. So I'm doing roughly a book a month to get through this series. And so far I'm really enjoying it. I am purchasing the audio for all of these books because I definitely could see myself revisiting the series again in the future. And I love the idea of having the books in hard copy, but also having them in audio so that I can listen to them again. All right, 2 left on this list of 17, and then I'm gonna draw out a couple random from my Kindle pile as well. So next up, I have Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. This is a longer book. It's one of 2 or 3 that are really long on my stack this month. And this one is a little over 640 pages. And I've heard a lot of amazing things about this book. I believe it is historical fiction. I believe it takes place in Japan. I'm not entirely sure of all the details, but I know it was also recently made into an adaptation and everyone has been talking about it. Everybody wants to follow this book and see how the adaptation goes. So I am looking forward to diving into this one as well. Because of its length, I did go ahead and get this one on audio so that I would have a little bit of an easier time getting through it. I have found that for longer books, it is definitely easier for me to go back and forth between multiple mediums or to do audio because I can get through them a lot faster. And then the last book that I chose to add to my pile is one called The Truth About the Harry QBert Affair. This one is also a little over 640 pages by Joel Dicker. I had never heard of this book. I saw one person talking about it and kind of reviewing it, and I was intrigued by the small amount of detail that she provided. I, again, know very little about this book, but I'm kind of curious about what it involves. And I love the title. I think that it just sounds really intriguing. So I will, again, report back at the end of this month and let you know what it is that I'm going to be finding out about the plot. Okay, so those are books 1 through 17. And now I'm going to pick my random alphabet letter, and then I'll go ahead and go to my Kindle and figure out what exactly I'm going to be reading from that letter. So I have my random jar here with all my letters in it. And I have picked the letter M. So let's take a look at my Kindle and see what I want to pick out that starts with the letter M. So I'm just going to the list on my Kindle, scrolling down to M and seeing what I find. And I'm just gonna do a quick fast scroll to see how many, and like, wow, there are a lot of M books here. Okay, so let's see what kind of strikes my fancy when I'm glancing through. Okay, so the first book that I'm gonna choose from the letter M is Mallory by Josh Malerman. And this is the Bird Box sequel. And I did read the Bird Box, or maybe it's just Bird Box, not the Bird Box. I did read Bird Box, which was made into an adaptation film. I never watched the film because I'm not a huge fan of horror films, but I really did enjoy the book. So I'm gonna pick up Mallory and read the sequel. So that's gonna be book number 1. All right, let's see here. It's really hard to pick books off of this list. Okay, the next book I'm gonna pick is one that I've heard incredible things about. I don't know much about it, but I've seen a lot of people reviewing it, and I've even seen people rereading this book because they like it so much, and it is called Middle Game by, I think it's Shannon McGuire. So I'm gonna pick that one as book number 2 of 5. I am also gonna pick, because I have heard so much about it and I have never read it, Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. This is a book that is incredibly popular. I've probably read a dozen reviews of this book talking about how people really love it. And I am going to check that out and see what I think. All right, couple left here. All right, the next book I'm going to pick, this one is kind of tough, but I think I'm gonna do it anyway. I have no idea how long this is. I'm a little concerned it's super long, but I'm gonna pick the first book in the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson is on my mind because right now he has a Kickstarter going on, and it is the top funded Kickstarter ever. In like 4 days, he's raised $20 million on Kickstarter. This is also the author that helped to finish the Wheel of Time series after Robert Jordan died. So I have not read any of his other work, but I've heard amazing things about Mistborn. So I'm going to pick up Mistborn: The Final Empire and see what I think of that. So that's going to be book number 4. And then I think let's see. I am also going to pick up, and I don't know much about what this is about, but I feel like I've just heard good things. I'm going to pick up My Absolute Darling by Gabriel Talent. So that is going to be book number 5 of my M books. So, okay, to repeat to myself so that I don't forget what I'm reading of these M books. I'm going to start with Mallory, and then Middle Game, Miracle Creek, My Absolute Darling, and Mistborn. So all of these are going to get added to my TBR pile for March. I cannot wait to share how all of this reading goes. And of course, I would love to hear, what are you up to reading in the month of March? Please drop any books that you are excited about in the comments below. I'll be back at the end of this month talking a little bit about how everything went. And if you haven't had a chance, definitely check out my February debrief video to hear about the 22 books that I read last month. Looking forward to seeing you again soon, and happy reading.